Well, hello to all the DLI students rolling in. So good that you have joined us this evening, post Easter. So, for those of you who serve at your local church, you're probably still a little groggy and tired. So glad that you still found time to join us, and we have a great conversation in store for you. Before I introduce my guest tonight, I want to remind you that the semester is coming quickly to an end, so keep on top of your work. If you have any questions or fall behind, let us know. Our team is happy to work with you. We do have our gathering, our conference coming up on June 2nd through 4th in Spring, Texas. We encourage you, if you have not done so yet, to register at destinyleaders.com. For those of you in the final semester, it'll be your big graduation date. And we'll have some information out to you soon about how to register for graduation and let us know that you'll be there so we can celebrate you in person. That's good. As usual, if you're watching this webinar with a group of people, please be sure to email Becca at destinyleaders.com with a list of everyone that's watching on the screen so we can make sure you get credit for it. If your name on Zoom is not your real name, we have no way of knowing that. So also, if you're like fan for Jesus 123 or something, you can uh, email Becca with your real name to let her know that you are there. So make sure you get all the credit that you need and deserve. Pray that Easter was successful for you. You've been hearing great reports from across the country from our Destiny churches of what God did and those that attended and came and were saved and baptized, and just such an exciting time of year. Tonight, I am honored to have my very good friend, Dr. John Karanko, join us all the way from Odessa. He is out in West Texas, and it is, as a song says, West Texas is the best Texas. It's so much uh, beautiful oil and
Hmm.
flat and one of the best churches in America, Impact City Church, led by Dr.
Oh,
John and his wonderful family, Des, and just more kids than I can count now. You got another one on the way. And so, but Dr. John is a good friend of mine, does pastor a great church in West Texas, also is an administrator in a public school. So he holds a very high level job in education while pastoring a large and growing church. So maybe that's something he'll talk to us a little bit about tonight, or maybe you can ask some questions about how that he's able to manage such a heavy job responsibility in addition to leading at a very high level. Because I know many of our volunteers, Dr. Karanka, that are watching, they find themselves in a similar place where they have demanding jobs, they have families, and they have a lot of responsibility at church. And so that I think your story will relate well um, to them. So I asked Dr. John to come on and to share with us whatever is on his heart. I hope you are taking notes, paying attention. You are definitely in for a treat from just an educator, a wise man, and a very, very good man. So take it away, Dr. Karanka.
thank you, Dr. Galloway. I'm extremely honored to be here with you tonight to be able to share on a topic that I believe that is so important in regards to developing leaders. And we're going to look at just four characteristics. I do want to just express my gratitude against to Dr. Galloway and the staff at Destiny Leadership Institute. I consider Dr. Galloway an incredible friend and someone that is just inspiring. So he asked me if I'd join. So you can't tell Dr. Landon no. So that's why I'm here. So excited to be able to connect with all of our DLI students. Just a little bit about myself. As Dr. Galloway mentioned, I am bivocational. Started in education in 2008 as a classroom teacher and coach. Did that for 6 years and then moved into an assistant principal role. Did that for 5 years, became a high school principal at the campus that I was at. Did that for 3.5 and been a central office administrator since November of 22. Currently serving as executive director of student services. I oversee a lot of critical programs for a large 4A school district here in West Texas, programs such as special education, 504, GT, assessment, safety and security, federal programs. There's total about 13. I'm honored to be bivocational. So I currently do that, and I'm going to tell you how I came into that. But I do want to honor, even though she's not here, my wife Desiree, my children, Parker, Paisley, and Penelope, and we have one on the way, so we're excited for that. But just in the midst of all that, so you hear what I do education wise. It was 2020, the end of 2020, and pastoring had always been on my heart since maybe late early 20s, I'll say. And it was something I was passionate about. And I don't have time to tell the whole story, but I will say we moved to a church we moved out of an organization that I was in, that I grew up in, moved to a church that was non-denominational just because we needed to put our kids somewhere that they could grow, somewhere we didn't have the resources to have a kids ministry at the church that we were at, moved our kids there. And it was a very frustrating time for me. And I'm just sharing this in hopes to be encouraging to someone. It was a frustrating time for me because I went from literally being involved in ministry for years and being active in ministry, should I say, to finding myself sitting in the middle section of the church because really no one knew who I was. But I want to encourage you. God always sees, and God knows, and God takes us through different seasons that we may not understand while we're experiencing them or facing them. Fast forward a few months, the pastor leaves, and our church board actually communicates with Dr. Brassfield, and they bring in, some candidates, some potential. And all this time, I was just filling in whenever they needed someone to preach. And then there came a time where um, the church board said, "Hey, would you be willing to sit down with us?" So Desiree and I actually went to have lunch with them. And then it was just a very informal conversation, never filled out an application or anything like that. 3 weeks later, I remember driving home from Odessa to Andrews, and I get a phone call from the board president who said, "Hey, congratulations, you've been elected the next pastor of Impact City Church." So this is early February of 2021. The church had gone through some turnover. Actually, the church went through a division in 2018, and then the pastor that was there just left abruptly. So it was a difficult situation, but all that to say is we just keep doing what God has called us to do. We stay faithful to Him, and in due season, God has a way of opening doors that no man could open. Never in my life did I dream of being where we're at, and we give God the glory for that. So, like I said, we can talk more if there's any questions at the end. So, became the senior pastor of Impact City Church in 2021 while I was a high school principal. Those two roles together, I would not recommend again of doing those two together because those are both two full-time jobs that really you're on call all the time. You never disconnect. I got to a point where it was just I needed something else. God opened the door for me to move into the administration building. That's where we're at, and excited for what God is doing at Impact City Church here in Odessa, Texas. So I just want to share with you on the topic developing leaders, and going to focus on the 4 C's of calling, capacity, character, and church. And starting with calling, we always want to know, why am I here? What is the purpose of of my of what God has called us to do? So I like to look at it through the lens of identity, who we are, and purpose, what God has created us for. And a truth that I want to share is something practical is before God uses us publicly, He'll always call us personally. You see it time and time again. There's just a personal call that takes place in our lives that then ultimately becomes something public where others are um, able to see what God is doing through our lives. Jeremiah reminds us that before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Psalms 139, Romans 11:29 tells us something that's so important for us to know, that God's gifts and His call are irrevocable. And sometimes we go through seasons in life where we may feel like, man, I thought that's where I was headed. I thought that's where God was calling me to, but it just maybe it's a dry season in your life. But I'm encouraged to know that as we connect to God and as we seek Him, we're able to see His will come to fruition in our lives. When I think of calling, um, what what's so important for us to develop in our Christian walk is confidence in that calling. Do I have confidence that God has called me for this season, for this purpose, and I'm to live it out? Have confidence that He who has begun the good work in you, He is faithful to complete it. That it's God that starts it, He initiates it, and He is also the one that sees it through. He's not just Alpha, He's Omega also. He's not just the beginning, He's the end. So we have to have confidence in that. And through that, we also get a clarity of purpose. We get a clarity of purpose as we seek God, as we continue to devote our lives to Him. Purpose becomes clearer. It becomes clearer because we're in tune with our Creator. We just have that relationship that we are constantly refining and constantly working. So clarity of purpose, and that's how we develop and get to a point, should I say, where we are sensitive to God's voice, and we're able to recognize His voice, and we're able to know where He's leading us, where He's calling us. So again, just having confidence in our calling, knowing that He called us to it, and He didn't call us to abandon us, to leave us, but He's going to be with us, and through that, gaining, acquiring a clarity of purpose, and then having the sensitivity to God's voice. Lead
Mhm.
me. Are you leading? I need you to lead me in every aspect. And oftentimes we want to just, and I'll just pick on myself. I've been guilty of just leaving it to the bigger decisions in life. But I would just encourage someone and tell you that God wants to be involved in every aspect of our lives and leading us in the big, the large, and everything in between, or the big, the small, and everything in between. So how can I make this practical?
Mhm.
Um, let can we articulate our calling in one sentence? Just thinking of that. Um, how do we hear God's voice? Well, we do it through prayer, through His Word, and seeking wise counsel. Who's speaking into our lives? Surrounding ourselves by people who are going to build us up. And I've also been of the mindset of you want to surround yourself with people that you want to be like, people that you see God working through, and being drawn to those relationships, so you can build each other up as iron sharpens iron. Um, when we look at our calling, it's always important to know that it's obedience in small steps. Sometimes it's not just a giant step. Sometimes it's not just getting from one place to the other, but it's just making those daily choices of, I'm going to live my calling out faithfully day after day after day. So being called by God for a purpose that's greater than ourselves. So number two, let's segue into capacity.
Mhm.
Capacity. What can I handle? Um, Two big areas here are growth and stewardship.
Mhm.
So God will grow our capacity before He increases our responsibility. I
Wow.
think that's important for us to know. God grows our capacity before He increases our responsibility.
Yeah.
You see this in Luke 16:10. Uh, Being trusted with little, you're faithful in the little, I'll give you much. I love what Paul tells Timothy: do your best to present yourself to God as one approved. Um, Small things that we may often overlook, that is just like, God, before before the next step, I want to be faithful with what you've called me to do right now. I saw this personally in my journey. um, we took over the church. We were running. I told you a little bit of history of it, the division, and then the pastor that left. I mean, when we came in, there was about 150, 160 with kids. on a Sunday, and it was that it was it could get frustrating, uh, in certain seasons, but it was just always God. You've called us to this, and I'm going to be faithful with what you've called me. And now, where we have grown to the numbers that we're at, running somewhere between 450 to 500 on average on
Wow.
a Sunday. But it took some discipline to say, God, I'm going to call. You've called me to pastor this group right now, and this is who I want to be faithful in this, and that's when God begins to do the increase. So it's where you're at, where you start in life. My ministry started. I actually started, should I say, the ushers ministry at the church that I grew up in, down in the Rio Grande Valley, and it was about doing the ushers ministry. I mean, I was so excited because we went to go buy headsets from Radio Shack. If you don't know where what Radio Shack is, it's because you're too young for that. But we had that type of just we created an environment. A couple of us of the young guys, we wanted to do that with excellence, and
Mm.
we started that not with the intent of ever, hey, or where's God going to lead us to, but it's about doing what God has called me to do right now and do it faithfully, do it with excellence, and then letting God take you to the next level. So capacity. Um,
Yeah, Dr. John, if
yes,
I could jump in, I was, whenever you're talking, this is so good. I was thinking of Exodus chapter 23,
yes,
verse
sir.
27 came to mind. So God is speaking to Moses and the children of Israel, and he says this, he said, I will send my terror ahead of you. Let's go down to verse 28. I will send the hornet ahead of you, and I'm going to drive out the Hivites, Canaanites, and Hittites out of your way. That's the good news. He's going to send his people out, his angels, his forces out ahead of them and
Mm-hmm.
deliver them from their enemies. But then he says this in verse 29, but I will not drive them out in a single year because the
Mm-hmm.
land would become desolate and the wild animals too numerous for you. Little by little, I will drive them out before you until you have increased enough to take possession of the land. I
Wow.
love he said, hey, I'm going to take you to the land, but the
Mm-hmm.
enemy is so strong that if you don't grow first, then they're going to overpower you. Like the worst thing that I could
Okay.
do for you is to put you into a place that you're not ready for right now.
That's
And I
right.
think so many of us in leadership, especially, I'm in that in between age now where I'm no longer the young gun, but I'm not the seasoned veteran quite yet either. But I remember all those years of anxiety
Mm-hmm.
of like I need my place. I need to find it. I need to get there. So this connects even back to what you were just saying about calling, which was just brilliant. Is I need to walk in my calling. I need to know my calling.
Mm-hmm.
And I've
Sure.
learned that the opportunities that I have now, man, if God would have given those to me 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and I was frustrated because
Sure.
of the timing, but I wasn't ready to do what I'm doing now. And I pray if things go according to plan that I'll be doing things in 10 years that I'm not able to do right now uh,
That's
because
right.
because I have to grow. So I just wanted to affirm that with you that I love I wrote it down. We have to grow our capacity before he increases our responsibility.
Yes, sir.
And if you manage people, that's also something. It's easy to give
Mm-hmm.
away responsibility beyond someone's capacity and then be frustrated that they're not meeting your expectations whenever
Right.
really it was that you weren't a good judge of their capacity. You were just
Mm-hmm.
trying to offload responsibility. But that's another sermon for another day. And I won't
Yeah.
interrupt.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in right there.
That's so good. That's so good because you will see that.
Yeah.
Um I grew up in ministry, and a lot of the friends, I was a youth leader in our church organization, so I got to travel some, and I there was a frustrating point just to piggyback off of Dr. Galloway. There was a frustrating point for me because my friends that I was traveling with, they started becoming pastors. Now they were a little bit older than me, but yet I was like kind of frustrated in my calling. And
Hmm.
it's just incredible to see when you just surrender it to God. Um, Countless people had told me, don't leave the organization. Don't leave the organization, because your chances of pastoring will go out the window when you leave. And I
Mhm.
remember one of Desiree's cousins telling us, "They're not your source; God is your source." And
Mhm.
it's just, it's encouraging to stay faithful in our current callings, and knowing that 10 years from now we're gonna be walking in something that we couldn't have walked in right now. So as we talk about capability, to wrap this portion up, just what are some skills, what can I develop, should I say, our skills, our leadership, communication, organization. God is honored in that. Emotional resilience, I think, is also a key point. Emotional resilience,
Say
to
that
be
one. Yes, sir. Yeah.
able to be, um, we're not driven by emotions. We make our choices and we let our feelings follow.
Mhm.
Um, time, energy management, especially for someone who's a student right now, balancing family, balancing work, balancing your education. It's just important that we take care of the big rocks. I love that analogy of the big rocks.
Mhm.
Um, you can't fit everything else in until you take care of the biggest, your priorities, your relationship, your walk with God, your family, um, and then it goes in that order. So time and energy management. So how can I make this um, applicable? It's always important for me to remember responsibility um, is over time. Is given over time. Um, it's both, it's on the receiving end, but also as you're in a leadership position, as Dr. Galloway said, it can be frustrating when you hand a responsibility off to someone, but if they're not ready for that. So it's just very important to be able to always see God in those situations, and make sure that we are being led by Him.
Mhm.
Um, and then just always have the mentality of, I'm here to grow, being a lifelong learner,
Mhm.
being stretched, um, and it's important, stretch, but don't break. There's a pulling, um, but when responsibility is given, it's just so important that we be cautious in that, and just know, um, there can be a breaking point, and we want to do our best to avoid that. Um,
Mhm.
Always saying, God, stretch me, um, and then just growing into what God has called you to carry.
Mhm.
Um, Growing into what God has called you to carry. So, all right, are we good on time?
We're good.
We're
Kay,
good.
can I get you to drill into something a little bit that I'm
Sure.
I'm really curious.
Huh.
Love everything you're saying here. I but there's two things where you said we can increase our capacity. I'd love for us to just dive in a little bit deeper.
Hmm.
Emotional resilience,
Hmm.
because I think there are those. Um, there's IQ, which is intelligence. There's
Hmm.
EQ, which is your emotional quotient.
Hmm.
Uh, there's SQ, your spiritual quotient. PQ, your physical quotient, and then EQ, your emotional quotient. So it's all the Q's there. And I
Right.
think normally the emotions are the one thing that is most overlooked, because if someone feels that they have the knowledge,
Hmm.
the capability, the resources, the skills, they feel that feels like those are the important things to get. But emotional intelligence and like the ability um, to not be needy, to not be offended, to not wear your heart on your sleeve, to truly want what's best for the church and not your own preferences. Some of those emotional qualities limit us more than we like to think. So, is there anything like whenever you're looking at like how can we assess kind of our emotional intelligence and how do we develop that resilience?
Good question. Emotional. I always say you don't want to make a decision. I've heard it say, it's not uh, an original quote. Never make a decision based off of a temporary feeling, temporary emotion. Um, developing emotional resilience, I think something that helps me and keeps me grounded is I constantly have to remind myself it's not all about you, John. It's not all about you. It's always about God, and there's always, it's some because in a leadership position you can have some preferences and you can have certain things that you would like to see, be done, but at the same time there's some autonomy that I believe should be given when you're able to assess a leader and be able to know where they are and be able to have a good understanding. um so that's something, for example, that I feed myself.
Mhm.
Just um letting you I've really progressed and developed over the years in that sense, because it has been, I could look at, if somebody looked at me, you know um, different than they had before, my mind could go to, did I offend them? Did I upset them? And then that's eating at me. Um, we're to the point where I'm like, maybe they had a bad day. And then you're able to connect with them later and you find out that you're feeling like that for no reason. Um, but I think that's so important. Not, like you said, not wearing your heart on your sleeve, and not just developing thick skin is so crucial in ministry, when moments like that come, because if not, we're going to let our emotions drive us. And if we don't have a good balance, because all of the cues are important and vital, and necessary, but we can't overlook the emotional aspect of it.
Yeah. And the one that's great, and also wanted to, before we moved on too quickly, is the time and energy management. I would love for you to speak to that because I do know you are a very present father, even though you have two full-time jobs. You spend great time with your wife and kids, and you're committed to your day job, to the school system,
Mhm,
making a big difference in kids' lives. You're also a present pastor. Um,
mhm,
one observation that I have is that in ministry, there was such an abuse for a while of people working too hard and burning out, being out of whack, out of balance, and burning out. And we've tried to correct that by establishing rhythms, kind of
mhm,
preserving our family time, creating boundaries. But sometimes I wonder if the pendulum hasn't swung too far away where we're so guarded with our
mhm.
time. Like, oh no, I can't do that. I gotta, I've got to have my Sabbath. I believe in a Sabbath, but I've got to have, I can't do that. I've got to disrupt my rhythm. How do we find that balance between, okay, the demands that God has put in my life are heavy. It
Mhm.
takes work. I've got to do the best with the talents that I've been given. I've got to redeem the time. I've got to make the most out of every opportunity. And I also need to preserve downside because I feel like we're not downtime. I feel like we're not always good at hitting that balance. Either we're always, it's just me and Jesus. I just need a few more hours of solitude.
Yeah,
Or it's just that pedal to the metal, burn ourselves out, never home in the evenings. Where is that happy medium that you found with all the complexity in your life?
sure. Um, thank you. That's a good question. So I do believe in having a healthy balance. So
Mm,
give you an example. I went to a 4-year old's birthday party on Saturday, because it's one of our worship team singers, and her husband serves on our media team as well. We try to go to everything that we're invited to as much as possible. And these are people that obviously are within our circle because we've known them from a small group.
yeah.
The beautiful thing about it is, what I love about pastoring is, for the most part, we get to do it together as a family, and I
Yeah.
get to
Yeah. That's it.
we get to walk through those situations. So it's not just me and you guys wait here.
Mhm.
It's not just me and Desiree, and we figure out what we're going to do with the kids. Hey guys, we get to go do this together. Now, there's some times where we have to walk into a meeting,
Mhm.
um, and obviously they're understanding of that. but it's just a big part, something that, and I'll just be, very honest. One of the things is that I want to make sure that my children, more than anything in this world, I want my children to be disciples of Jesus.
Mm,
Um,
beautiful.
so that is my priority, and right now it's to the point where I'm even looking at some different options and for our family to be able to align what we're doing with that, because more than anything, sometimes I feel we are extremely, sometimes it is exhausting. On Wednesdays, I work every day in the office till 4:30. I come home, I change real quick. Parker gets out of golf at 5. We pick him up. He gets in the car straight from golf practice, and we jet to Odessa because we live about 35 miles from the church that we're at. Get over there, have time to eat Chick-fil-A in the car most of the times, and then get to youth because it starts at 6:30, and then Desiree and I have Bible study in the church lobby. We have those kind of hectic days where it just feels like it's go go go. But I think an important part to balance that is there's going to be, for example, a Friday or a Saturday evening where we're not going to do anything but just disconnect and spend time with each other.
Mhm.
So whatever that looks like for you, for us, we have this mini golf place, putt putt, in Midland that we like to go to, and we just make it a priority to disconnect. Once this call is over, I'm done working for the night. Typically, there's more work that gets done, but I'm gonna go spend some time with them because tomorrow will be our Wednesday Bible study. Thursday we have worship team practice. I'm actually going to baptize someone in the evening. A brother that is in hospice and doesn't have a whole lot of time left, but he
Mm.
really wants to get baptized. So we're going to do that on Thursday evening. But all that, my family gets to go with me for that. So I
Wow.
think a
Yeah.
very important part of it is you give your children a front row seat to what you get to do. I never we never tell them this, we have to do this. We get to do this. It's the calling of our lives. It's our privilege and it's our joy, and we get to do it together. So we love
Mhm.
going to church together. Anytime we have some type of activity, we're there, and we get to enjoy each other's time there, and so it's not really us being disconnected. And thank God, have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old who love Jesus, and are passionate about Jesus, and I'm at Aspire Ministry at a young age. They've already asked questions, and it's a beautiful thing because it hasn't even been with us, um, really leading them that way, or purposefully, in other words, making them, should I say, for lack of a better word, they're it's coming from their heart, and that's just very encouraging. But I think finding the balance is so important. Um, letting our families know that God has called us to this, and that we get to serve together, I think is important.
Love it. Yeah, I remember watching a Tech football game in a hotel lobby with Parker and talking about ministry, which is just so
Yeah,
so cool. He's so young, and but still, what you guys have done to raise them to love and honor the church is actually a whole webinar that we need to do sometime. Is how do we raise our kids not to resent the church but to love it?
mhm,
And I think it's why what you're doing, that this isn't what mom and dad have to do. It's what we get to do, and we do it together.
right.
Well, I don't want to run out of time, and we got a lot of questions already rolling in. So let's hit these last two and then take some questions.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, we'll go through this quickly. The next one is character, and I like to phrase it like this: Who am I becoming? And think of integrity, think of spiritual formation, because many of the times our gifting can open doors, but it's our character that determines how long we stay there. Um, so it's just so important for us to have to couple them together. We need gifting, and the gifting comes from God, but our character is what provides the opportunity to continue, for us to be sustained there. Um, Again, you're faithful in the little, I'll give you much. I love a scripture that comes to mind. The book of Proverbs, chapter 4:23, guard your heart. It's just so important. Our character, um, it is needed. It's needed in ministry, and we know that. So, like I said, just wanted to talk integrity, humility, consistency, and private devotion. And what I'll share on private devotion is when you look at Jesus, you see it in the gospel. Um, don't when you pray, when you fast, what you do in private, you'll be rewarded in public. So it's just so important to have those disciplines in place because that's what develops our character, to continue to be like Christ, to be more like Him each day. How is this practical? In our walk, do we have a- accountability relationships? Are there people in our lives that can call us out if there's an area where we're lacking? Is there people that we trust enough to watch our blind spots? Um, and just obviously, again, should I say, coming back to the spiritual disciplines that we need to be people of prayer. We need to be people who are in the Word. We need to be people who fast. The saying I heard 23 years ago, and it has stuck with me since: we work for Him, but do we walk with Him? We work for Him, but do we walk with Him? And I think that's so important that I get to work for Him because I walk with Him, and that that walking with Him would always be a priority over working with Him, working for Him, should I say, and that we just give priority to our relationship with Him and let that build our character. Um, choosing who I'm becoming over what I'm achieving. Who am I becoming over what I am achieving? And the last one, church. Where does this all come together? Where do I belong? Because community and alignment are so important. Because calling is personal, but it's always lived out in the context of a community. Um, where to develop here? Um, having a team mindset, having a team mindset that it is just always, um, the power of numbers. And our Sunday mornings, we have a prayer huddle like many churches do, but I tell the team constantly, we're all in a circle. There's nobody over anybody here because we're a team. We come together. If somebody walked in, they wouldn't. If no one's talking, the goal is that they see multiple team members and not just somebody over them. Why? Because we want to always promote that we're better together. We're better together. Um, Having a commitment to our local church, and then when we get into leadership roles, that we place leaders on teams and not platforms, that we look at it from that perspective. You're here because God has led me to have this conversation with you, and I feel that this is where God is leading you. I'll share a quick example. Our young adults leaders, we have a couple who leads our young adults, and we didn't have a young adults ministry when we came on back in 2021. God led me to have a conversation with them, and just I s- I didn't know them too well, but I said I'm going to go ahead and just try this. And it took about a year and a half. There was 3, 4 maybe showing up, and they stuck with it. They stuck with it, and today that group meets together. There's about 25 to 30 of them, but it's just being knowing who's on your team and allowing them the opportunity to thrive in what God has called them to do. I think it's so important that we teach honor and unity, and to always remember I'm part of something bigger than myself. And as I close, God isn't just looking for available people, but He is developing dependable people. Not
Mm.
just looking for available people, looking for dependable people. Dependable leaders are always built in their calling. So let's hone in on that, that we would be able to be stretched in our capacity, that we would be grounded in character, and that we would be planted in the church, and that we would let God use our lives for His
Wow.
glory.
So good. So good. Thank you. One of the
Yes.
joys I have is being able to share my friendships and relationships with all of our students. So it's to bring my two worlds together. I love I love our students. I love what I get to do. And then when every time that Sarad and I, we come out to Odessa, we watch you and Des and the way that you love the people so well. Um, and I mean, so I come because how much you love the people. Strata still wants the front doors of your church. Uh, they are
Good.
in a
Friends, you're
they're
coming in October again. You're coming
yeah,
in
okay.
October.
Let's go.
Right?
They
One of
they
these days.
they,
One of these days.
they have a beautiful historical building in Odessa. It's just got some beautiful architectural features. But uh, that I'm always struck and I always leave Impact City impacted by your leadership and by how much you love the people and how just good of a shepherd you are. So thank you for sharing your heart with our
God bless.
students tonight. And I hope that our students were able to not just catch what you said. Your content was golden. I've got like 30 things that I've written down here that I'm going to absolutely steal and not give you any credit for.
You're too kind. You're too kind. No, no, no.
But it's not just your content, it's your heart. Uh, and I hope that they got what you taught, but there's some things that you shared that can't be taught but caught, and that's just the heart that you have, and I hope it was passed through.
That's my
Um,
prayer. That's my prayer. I'm extremely honored. I'm extremely honored. And we're here to serve in any way that we can. So
so we got a few questions that have rolled in. This is let's see. Um, uh, the first one was for me whenever I mentioned a little bit about having a little bit of anxiety about trying to find my place when I was younger, and then did I have to grow into the role, or did the
mhm.
role need to shift to fit me, or maybe both? It was definitely a little bit of both. I had a lot of growing to do, and then I also had to find, the role over time shifts to match your giftings as well. I think it's being patient, and it's also being willing to do things that are outside of your comfort zone and maybe even outside of your skill set. uh, then
For sure.
ultimately, when you're faithful, God will open those doors where you get to do exactly what you're called, what you're called to do. It takes growth and humility, just willingness to like, okay, I don't think that I should have to do that, or I don't want to do that, or I don't like doing that, but I'm going to do what the role requires,
Yes,
waiting
sir.
on God to open up the right doors. Um,
Right.
I
Sir.
think you and I both have a little bit of unconventional paths in the sense that you went the
Mhm.
formal you had a job in the education world, kind
Mhm.
of ended up as a pastor almost by accident, and
Yep.
now here you are. You didn't pursue this; it kind of found you.
Mhm.
I came up through the academic world thinking that I was going to be probably a professor, and then God tricked me into local church ministry as well. And
Mhm.
then so I've kind of found my lane through an unconventional means as well. And
Yes,
I think
sir.
it's encouragement to all of our students who are, didn't take the traditional path of like, I want to lead the church. And so I went to Bible college and then I went to like, you just God uses each of you, each
Mhm.
of us in our own way. So we have some growing to do, and then over time, when people recognize our gifts, they will shift the roles so that we can thrive, so that they can use our giftings.
That's
Uh,
right. So good.
so you mentioned that in ministry you have to have thick skin.
Mhm.
How do you balance thick skin with staying empathetic and staying, kind of have a tender heart? I like to say we need thick skin and a tender heart. So how do you hit that balance?
I think we have to, there's always going to be an opportunity for us to be offended. Um,
Mm.
Being offended is inevitable. Staying offended is a choice. And I think it's so important for us to, when those opportunities or when those times, should I say, come that would create offense in us, um, give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think ultimately, yeah, that could run out if someone's being malicious time and time again, but
Mm.
not be so quick to jump on that emotional roller coaster of, did they mean that? did they do it on purpose, or what if they were just having a bad day? See what is developed. Is there is there a pattern that is
Mhm.
being developed? Then you'll be able to take that and then make, an informed decision based off of your experiences. But to quickly, everyone's going to have an off day, um, and it's just a matter of, when having a thick skin, that you don't get offended, but at the same time, I can tell you, then have that conversation. Just say, hey, I just wanted to check on you, because I believe that is, I you're spot on. You have to have that thick skin where you're not just offended right away, and that you want to walk away from the conversation or leave it like that. But to be able to say, you know what, maybe they didn't mean it that way, and coming back and having that conversation of, hey, just wanted to check on you because that's not like you, or this has been going on. Is everything okay? And then you're able to find out, some things. I'll give you an example. There was this new family that came to church, um, and always friendly, husband and wife, two kids. Um, the wife, I asked him, how are y'all? And the wife was like, I'm okay. And just kind of like seemed a little like maybe not happy to be here at church. And that's kind of where my mind went. Um, asked her the next Sunday, you know, I asked the husband, how are you? I'm good. Asked the wife, how are you? I'm okay. And I stopped and I said, I noticed you said that last time also.
Mhm.
There's something I can help pray with you for. And she like broke down. She's like, my uncle passed away suddenly. And we had
Wow.
to and we had no idea. So the human part of me wanted to be like, man, maybe she's not happy here. Maybe they want to go somewhere else. But if I could just be persistent and cut through that, and try to get to the heart of the issue. So I got to pray with them right in our lobby, pray for the entire family. But it was just an opportunity of, you know what, I'm not going to get offended because she kind of seemed like unhappy. But then taking the time to ask those questions. Um,
Yeah, very good. Now, I think the demeanor is that you have to work hard on not being easily offended.
mhm,
But the remaining empathetic is that I'm kind of choosing not. I'm choosing to lower myself by not taking offense, but I'm still
that's right.
to your needs. Like so, a problem that I have or that I've had struggle in ministry. I'm pretty close to perfect now, but when I was younger, one thing I
Go.
struggled with
There you go.
is that as someone who generally has pretty thick skin, I would read that off on other people. Uh,
Mhm.
so so for me, it's kind of hard to offend me. Um, and then I expect the same for other people. So then when someone comes and says, "Hey, you offended me," or someone else hurt my feelings, my
Mhm.
instinct is to be like, just roll my eyes and like, you know what, put on your big boy pants and get over it.
Obvious.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's just that was an immature attitude because what happens is that if we're too thick-skinned, we often kind of read that off on and put that off on other people. Where the mature spot is, I'm going to do my best to be
Mhm.
unoffendable, but I'm also going to have a lot of empathy for you if you're offended or if you're hurt. And I can't expect you to react to situations the same way that I do.
That's
Um,
right.
that's good. Very good.
Yes.
Can you expand a little bit? You mentioned briefly the idea of the big rocks. So someone wants you to expand, other than what you are going to get Des for Christmas this year, a really big rock. But besides
The
that, what
the
did you mean by big rocks?
the big rock. So if you don't, um, I remember it was an analogy. I got it actually through email back when it was like AOL dial-up. So this kind of shows some time. It was, you take this jar, and if you have these big rocks, you have these medium-sized rocks, you have these pebbles, and then you have the sand. Um, they all fit in this jar, but if you put all the sand in first,
Mhm.
um, when you try to put in the big rocks, it won't fit. Um, so there's always, you have to be methodical in the way you place them in there. The big rocks being our relationship with God, our families, ministry, calling, what that is. You put the big rocks in first. Then you take the medium rocks, and that can be Um, Other things in life. It could be, you know, things you enjoy to do. And then you have your small little pebbles, and they could be, your maybe whatever you do for leisure, right? And then you have the sand, but you have to put the big rocks in first. If you don't take care of that, they'll never fit. So prioritizing those things are just, what has to be at the forefront of our minds, and then everything else can fit in. But if we don't get those big rocks in first, they'll never get in.
Yeah. And the irony is that if you put the big rocks in first, then you
Hmm.
fit in all the other stuff. So what Jesus
Yeah,
says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So you
right,
actually can have a fuller life by having your priorities right.
right.
Uh,
Because you
so
can put everything in, and the
yeah,
smallest things in life, the sand, if it fits right in,
right.
uh, when you have it in the correct
Yeah.
form.
Yeah. So you have your two jobs, you have your family, you have your church. But then I've observed, you're able to spend a lot of time with your family and go on trips and do hobbies
Mhm.
I- and so I think sometimes whenever you see someone living a full life, you think their priorities must be out of whack. They're always I'll let it get personal. I run every day. So like, man, you must not be busy. I get this all the time. You run all the time. You must not be busy. I was like, no, actually, I run all the time because I am busy because I've
Yeah.
put the right priorities in, and that's made my life so structured that
Hmm.
my first hour of the day, I know what I'm doing every day,
Hmm.
which gives me the time for the hobby.
That's right.
That's it. So somebody wants some clarity on all the Qs, the IQ, PQ, EQ, and SQ.
Mhm.
Uh, IQ is intelligence quotient, SQ is spiritual quotient, PQ is physical quotient, and EQ is emotional quotient. Not using these in their technically their correct definitions. IQ in one sense is sort of fixed, like either you have it or you don't. What I mean mostly by IQ is that there's a certain amount of knowledge you need to do the task. So you need to study, you need to learn, you need to research, you need to get a think tank, whatever it takes for the IQ, the intelligent quotient. The physical
Mhm.
quotient, the PQ, that is, do you have the physical capacity to do what God's called you to do? That involves eating right, exercise. If you don't have the if you don't stay in good shape, you can't work full time, pastor full time, and lead a family full time. You're going to be too tired. So, how are you physically stewarding your body, as well as the physical resources you have? Um, God maybe didn't call you to start a nonprofit. Well, never mind. Like usually, God is going to resource you uh,
Mhm.
to to your ministry. So like what do you have money, to do the thing God's called you to do? And he can fill in the rest, but you have to ask yourself, like, what is the PQ? Then there is the SQ, the spiritual quotient. Are you spiritually mature enough to do the thing that God's called you to do? How's your prayer life, your fasting life, your spiritual disciplines, as we've talked about earlier? I know
Mhm.
people that are gifted in leadership. Maybe they're powerful communicators, but their SQ is so low that their gifting would take them to a place where their character could not sustain them.
Mhm.
Finally, the EQ is the emotional quotient, and that is your general level of emotional intelligence. Do you are, can you be empathetic with people? Can you read a room? Can you uh, it's hard to describe, but it's walking into a room and immediately kind of knowing what they need. Um,
Mhm.
so specifically, how can you be stretched without feeling like you're spiraling or on a roller coaster? I really believe, for me personally, that if the feeling of spiraling is occasional, that's normal. Like there's going to be times where you end a day going like, man, today there was a lot. God had asked me to do a lot today, and I don't know how much longer I can do this.
Mhm.
That is a normal occasional feeling. But if it's sustained, if you always feel like you're spiraling or on a roller coaster, that very well may be a sign that you need to
Mhm.
talk to someone in your life, some accountability, a spiritual leader, a mentor, if it's taking to a dark place emotionally, even a mental health professional, but specifically about your spiritual development, talk to your pastor or a leader and go, "Hey, I'm always feeling overwhelmed and out of control. Help me see what I need to take off my plate right now, because God will stretch you to capacity, uh, but He's not going to leave you in a perpetual state of overwhelm." Um,
Mhm.
from my own experience, like I want to caveat that maybe God might do something that I've not experienced yet, but I had been in seasons where I was overwhelmed all the time, and that meant I needed to let something go. Uh,
Yeah.
and and that's yeah, that there recently there's been seasons where I'm like, man, I something's got to give, and then once I gave something up, I'm like, okay, I'm back at my equilibrium.
Yeah.
But even today, I mean, I had meetings like literally, I was in a meeting on Zoom from 12:30 until 5 or something, and
Wow.
just one after another, and then I finished up. I had dinner. I was like, man, I love spending time with Dr. Karanko. I love my DLI students, but I don't like I am I don't want to do this tonight.
Yeah.
That's
Drained.
that's me being stretched to capacity. That's me just being full. So I think we have to distinguish between being emotionally overwhelmed all the time and like those moments of like, oh, it's more than I can handle. Do you have any
Right.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. I can share. So, man, it was right when I was towards the end of being the high school principal, and I was obviously in the middle of pastoring 2022, and I had the conversation with Pastor Tommy Brandon, and it was October, um, of like the end of October, and I was like, "Man, something pray for me." I said, "Something has to give because I'm just feeling the weight of both positions that I'm currently in."
Mm,
And it was just a matter like I could sense it. I it was a lot. And I was like, I'm gonna have to make some sort of change. I started thinking, am I gonna have to look for a different job? And it was like 3 weeks later when the deputy superintendent texted me as I was walking the campus, just said, "Hey, can you come to my office?" And it was, "Hey, we know you've been working towards coming to the administration building. This position's here and it's yours if you want it. You just kind of say the word." So it was just like a point of where I knew something had to change, and God's way of orchestrating that change, so I could be able to continue to be bivocational. Ultimately, I would love the opportunity, and I'm working towards the opportunity of going into ministry full time. Um, but right now, our church setup has been conducive to me being bivocational. There was a staff already in place that works there on a daily basis, and they handle a lot of the day to day
mm,
minor things that need to be taken care of. And if that weren't the case, I wouldn't be able to be bivocational. But that has allowed me. The situation that I came into has allowed me to be able to do what I'm doing today.
yeah. Yeah, that's for me a sort of a similar situation. We have some of the great people, Grace Church Tomball, where I'm fortunate to pastor, that are watching this, and they could attest to this. Is that a couple years ago we hired an incredible associate pastor. His name's Pastor Jesse Polito, and he's a DLI grad, and that was a result of me having conversations with my pastors and saying, "Hey, I need help with the day to day," and that's
Mhm.
so hard for me to say because
Yeah.
I think that I can lead Destiny, lead DLI, teach classes, write books, learn Greek, run marathons, be there for my family, and I hate saying like I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed by just the day-to-day responsibilities. I can do it all. And
Hmm.
that honest assessment of like, hey, I need some help.
Yeah.
Um, it brought my emotions back into check where I've never been a really an emotionally driven person, but I was feeling uh
Hmm.
overwhelmed and like there was just too much being asked of me that I could do. And I'm living that constant state of you wake up first thing in the morning and you go, oh man, I've got to do so much today. So I think it's being honest sometimes whenever we are overwhelmed that we need to either let something go or delegate some responsibilities or just admit like, hey, I can't do all this by myself. I've got to have some help.
That's
Which
right.
leads us to our last question is, and
Mhm.
you're going to answer this one because I am terrible at this. Is how do you discern when to say no to opportunities that you were given? I've never learned that, so I just say yes and figure it out. So
Yeah,
help me, Dr. John.
I've never
I
been
need
very
help.
good at that. I have not. I'll tell you, like prior to this year in the school system, um, my superintendent said, "Hey, our director of special education is retiring. Would you be willing to take that on?" So you have one person doing the entire special education department, and I'm doing like 12 other things, but let's merge the roles together. And I said, I'd be honored to. So it's just, you know, I don't know if I've mastered that
Yeah.
just yet, but it's just sometimes I think the important part of that is because when there's a lot going on, I think you have going back to balancing that with rest. It's like when
Mhm.
you disconnect, that you disconnect fully. Like our family went to Europe in October, and I took maybe like two phone calls just because I had to. But other than that, it was just strict family time, just to be able to recharge. So
Mhm.
those types of things are important, and knowing sometimes physically, you're like, I'm gonna have to miss this, and it'd be okay. And you tell somebody, I'm gonna I'm gonna have to skip out on this or whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. For yourself, you can't. I remember it being said, you can't violate the laws of health and rest. If you
Right.
violate the laws of health and rest, you will die with all your gifts and with all your talents and with all your skills.
Mm.
It's so important for us to take care of ourselves um, in that manner and make that a priority. So
Yeah.
having your own gauge of that, I think developing that is what could be helpful.
Yeah. I think two thoughts is first of all, I try to remind myself that every yes is 1,000 no's.
Hmm.
If I say yes to one thing, I'm saying no to something else. So if I say yes to taking a, a preaching date, I'm saying no to being at home. If I say yes um, to teaching a class, I'm saying no to maybe working on another project that I need to work on. And so that every yes means I'm saying no to. And so just to be honest and be aware of that. If you're married, a great way to do that too is your spouse is usually going to be better at saying no to your calendar than you are. So whenever
Hmm.
I get opportunities, the first thing I do is talk to my wife. I'm like, hey, I got asked to do this. What do you think? And then we look at the calendar and we can make a decision based on that on whether or not it feels like it would be a big enough win to take away from the other thing. Um,
Right.
and this has been so good. Thanks. The students have been very engaged. So thank you for logging on and being uh, such a good audience. And then Dr. Kronko, thank you. You've been fantastic tonight. And thank you for sharing
I'm
your
honored.
knowledge and your heart with our students.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and praying for all our DLI students. We're rooting for you, and we'll be there. For those of you graduating, we'll be there to celebrate you in spring.
Yes. It's very coming up very soon.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks again for watching, everyone. You guys have a great evening. Get some rest, and we will talk to you soon.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.